Are you in your 30s or 40s and you want to become a professional pilot? You already have a career, but now you're looking for that career 2.0 to become a professional pilot? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk about the requirements to become a pilot, how you can still have a professional flying career at your age, the costs involved with flying, and I'll be talking about several other topics. So, hey, I'm Dr. Andy Multer. I'm a flight instructor, a CFI IIMEI. I used to be a corporate pilot, and now I'm a professor of aviation. And so, I'm a few weeks ago, I just turned 40 years old. And so, I mean, I still feel like I'm 24, but no, the calendar says I'm 40, and it makes me wonder, if I wasn't already a pilot, but I knew everything that I do now, what it takes to become a pilot, would I become a pilot? Yeah, I would. Now, there's a lot of different factors that come into play, but I think, let's say, you start right now. Let's just say it takes you 5 years and you're 40 years old. Well, at 45, you still have 20 years of professional flying experience living your dream of being a professional pilot. And so, the first step in becoming a professional pilot is one, you have to get a medical certificate. In fact, I would recommend you get a first class medical certificate. And so if you haven't seen it already, I have this video here about how to get your medical certificate. And so, a first class medical certificate, that's what the airlines are going to want to see when you go to apply that you qualified for a first class medical certificate. And if you don't qualify for the first class medical certificate, well, then you know that, flying's not for you, unfortunately, but at least you don't have to spend 80 to $100,000 getting all those pilot certificates. And so to get your medical certificate, you're going to have to go to a aviation medical examiner, an AME. And so to find an AME, I want to show you my website, multaraviation.com. And so on my website, I have this pilot resources section. And so right here in the center, I have this FAA AME locator link that you can use to find an aviation medical examiner near you. And so you call them, you set up an appointment, and then to the left of that, you're going to have to fill out an FAA MedExpress application, and then they'll give you a confirmation number. You take that with you to your exam, and that way you can get your medical certificate. And then also on my website, I have all the pilot gear I recommend. And so this is gear that you absolutely need. I have all these books here. In fact, I have my book here on the top left, How to Become a Pilot. It's available on Amazon. If you're a Kindle Unlimited reader, I have it available for free as of right now. But I have all the steps that you need to know to become a professional pilot. But then all these other books, which I include in my How to Become a Pilot book, are books that you're going to need throughout your flight training. And so I do recommend you get those. And then also, I have all the other gear I recommend, like the headsets, the iPads, knee boards, flight computers, the flight bags that you could use, just cool sunglasses because, hey, you're a pilot, you got to look like a pilot. The different types of logbooks I recommend, and just random other gear that you definitely need. And so you might be wondering, am I too old to become a pilot? Well, honestly, if you're in your 30s, your 40s, absolutely not. Even if you're in your 50s, there's still an opportunity for you to become a professional pilot. And so if you're looking to become a career 2.0 pilot, you know, if you want to work for the airlines, the retirement age for a professional pilot is 65. Now, if you're, like I said earlier, you're 40 years old, let's say it takes you 5 years to get to the point where you can get hired by the airlines, that's still 20 years of professional flying. If you're 30 years old, man, I mean, let's just say it takes 5 years, you've still got 30 years. I mean, that is an enormous amount of time that you get to be a professional pilot. Now, let's say you're in your 50s. You can still have a 10-year airline pilot flying career. And then, it doesn't matter what age you are. After 65, if you still want to work as a pilot, you can then go work for Part 135 or Part 91. Part 135 is like corporate charter, things like that. Part 91, you're flying for some company that has their own jet or their own turboprop. You can still fly professionally beyond 65. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't want to work beyond that age. Man, you'd be surprised. There's a lot of pilots that just love flying. They can't, they're addicted to being in that cockpit and they just can't, they don't want to leave that left seat, that left or right seat. And so they'll keep on working beyond 65. All right, so let's talk about the cost of flight training. So the cost of flight training, it really depends on where you go. It can be around 80 to $100,000 or more. Just depends on what part of the country you're in, how often you're flight training. And the dilemma here is how do you actually finance it? Now, if you're like a lawyer, a doctor, somebody that's already a established professional that you've made quite a bit of money, you save quite a bit of money, well, then this is going to be easy for you. I would recommend going to an accelerated flight school. Where you have your savings to live on and then you just blast through the flight training. But if that's not you, and that's okay, then you need to just do whatever it takes to save up some money. And I do not recommend going into debt, taking out loans. The loans that are available for people that want to become pilots have extremely high interest rates. I mean, you will bury yourself in debt and be extremely hard to get out of. Uh, it's one of those things that, to get your private pilot certificate, it's going to take you, cost about maybe 8, 10, 12, really high cost, 15,000, maybe 20,000, but that's pretty high. But, you could expect to pay 8 to $10,000, maybe a little bit more. Uh, so I would just do whatever it takes to save up that money and then fly in your off time. So if that means you got to, drive for Uber, DoorDash, whatever it is, go work at Walmart, stocking shelves, fill in online orders, in your, outside of your regular job, you know, I know you don't necessarily make that much doing those jobs. I mean, sure, people support themselves on it, but it's you save, you do that for a few months, for a year, and you save up the money you need to earn your private pilot certificate. And then you do that again for your instrument rating. And then you do that again for your commercial pilot certificate. And then you do that again for your flight instructor certificate. And then once you're a flight instructor, if you don't have the money to support yourself, based on your current lifestyle, because I know some of you have families, you're supporting people. This will be something that you have to do on the side. Uh, Flight instructors, they don't, you might see flight instructor jobs making 30, $40 an hour. And yeah, it sounds nice if you're, working 40 hours a week. But in all honesty, I mean, you're probably getting paid for, if you're busy, 20 to 30 hours a week. And that's without benefits. I mean, you might be able, eventually you can get a full-time flight instructor job, but I mean, it really depends on where you're at. You could be making like 50, $60,000 a year once you're established as a flight instructor. When you're first starting out, maybe like 20, 30,000. Uh, but if you become an independent flight instructor, then you can make a lot. I mean, you're making six figures as you're building up that flight time. Now, since you're going to be working part time outside of your normal job that's supporting your family, well, it's going to take a while. If you have the money saved up where you can still have your normal lifestyle, or because I mean, if you're 20 years old, you probably don't have a family, and you can live on ramen. But if you're older, your 30s, 40s, you probably got someone that's depending on you, and it's hard to kind of you've got that lifestyle creep that's caught up, mortgage, bills, other student loans. So, working as a flight instructor on the side will help you build up your flight time. And then eventually you'll reach that 1,500-hour mark where you're legally able to get hired by the airlines. Now, I want to talk to you about the impact of becoming a pilot on yourself and on your family. This is going to be the hardest thing you ever done in your life. Um, the studying alone, you got to spend hours and hours studying. I always like to tell my private students, learning to become a pilot is 90% studying, 10% flying. Flying is just a formality to becoming a pilot. It's your knowledge that makes you a pilot. So you have to spend hours and hours of studying. That means your family that you probably have, you're going to depend on them to help support you. That means, let's say you're a guy with a wife that, you kind of split the responsibilities. You need to have a frank conversation. When I was starting to work on my doctorate, I was dating this girl who eventually became my wife. We got married while I was working on my doctorate. And I told her, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, but, you are the most important person in my life, but you're not going to be the top priority in my life while I'm working my doctorate. And that's kind of how you have to treat this flight training. Your spouse, they're the most important person in your life, but they cannot be your top priority. The studying, the flight training, the saving up money has to be the top priority. Now, I know that might sound a little harsh, but that's why you have this conversation early, before you start all this to make sure that they're going to be on board, there to support you. Normally, you might do the dishes or you might be the one doing the laundry. Well, you have to speak to your significant other and be like, hey, I'm going to need you to pick that up to help give me that time that I need to study. Now, I don't want to make it seem like, it's like, okay, we're putting our marriage or our relationship on hold. No, you just have to budget your time accordingly. So when I was working on my doctorate, I was telling my wife, I was like, hey, if we want to do something, we have to plan it out weeks in advance. That way I can make sure I get all my work done and then we go do whatever thing we were going to go do together. That includes, going out to dinner, going on vacations, just spending a Saturday afternoon together. I had to plan that out weeks in advance. And now you might be wondering, well, am I just too old to become a pilot? Will the airlines, the corporate, flight departments, will they want to hire me at my age? Well, the answer is yes. It's one of the advantages of being older is that you have a lot more life experience, you're more mature. I'm not saying, if you're 18 or 20 you're not mature. It's just it's a different level of maturity. As we age, we just gain more and more maturity and we've developed skills over time that, just come that are inherent with time. And so, the professionalism, the airlines definitely want you to be professional and have good customer service with the passengers. Or if you're a, cargo pilot, then, you got to have that motivation, determination, and always do what's right and just having good work ethic. Um, and then, let's say that you're an office professional, you work in accounting or finance or, something that, a normal business relies on. And let's say you're in your 30s, your 40s, or even your 50s. If you come to apply to be a pilot and you have that experience, I'll tell you, corporate pilots, those corporate flight departments they work at, the companies they work for, a lot of times, a lot of those pilots actually do like corporate job functions for the company they work for. It's not because they have to, it's because they want to. I mean, they've developed all these skills. And like, let's say you go fly the executives to whatever location. If you've got, good business skills, something to contribute, I mean, it's wonderful being able to contribute to the company you're working for rather than just sitting at the FBO, which is like a truck stop for pilots, sitting at the FBO while the executives are off doing their work. You can actually participate and be an influencer in your own company that you fly for. So, you go to apply for a corporate flight department in your 50s, in your 40s, and like, hey, I'm experienced in this field of business. Well, man, you've got a big advantage over a young pilot that's trying to get into a corporate flight department. Well, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe. That way you get notified every time I come out with a new video. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.